Hey, guys, and otherwise, this is Jonathan O. Roselion.
And this is Noah, also known as Polyphonic, and you're listening to Horns and Wings, the podcast where we look at Saga issue by issue.
And this issue is issue number 4, aka the one that's just porn. This is a porn podcast now.
I'm about it.
So look forward to that. Let's get in.
All right.
I just said let's get in because I guess it's a porn pod. It's gone full porn.
I think that's what they call a Freudian slip.
Oh boy. Hey, this issue, it's all great. I'm really excited about this one.
Yeah. This is a fun weird one. I feel like this is the one where if you haven't already, you really start to get a sense of what Saga's about in this one.
Yeah, yes. This in my mind is an iconic one. Like, this is definitely one of the things, multiple parts of this issue where when I think Saga, it's just like this porn.
This is where you'll either be in for the long haul or hard out.
Yeah. Oh, you'll either be hard out or hard out.
In.
All right. So I mean, well, we start with such a boring splash.
I mean, I think first we should also discuss the cover. Mm-hmm. I think it's a really beautiful cover.
Hey, John from the future here, calling in on my iPhone 30. The old XXX, and we just talk about the cover of the book here without describing the cover of the book. Look, podcasting's hard. This is episode 4. Give us a danged break. But first of all, the cover, it's this gorgeous yellow cover where the Will and Lion Cat are sitting on this reflective orb that's just floating there. It's really cool and evocative and makes zero sense. And it's great. I'm pretty sure the Will's smoking a joint on it. It's the best. It's great. And then I just wanted to mention that starting next issue, actually, next episode for us, we remixed the structure a little bit. We've heard from some feedback because it's our first episode after we launched, and it's something that I've been wanting to change. So the structure is going to change just a little bit, where at the beginning of every scene in the comic, we are going to start with summarizing that whole scene all the way through, and then we're going to get into the details. So for the people who haven't read it in a long time or who have never read it, it's going to be a lot easier to follow, and you'll be able to know what's actually happening, opposed to us just talking about a cover that if you don't have it directly in front of you, you won't know what the heck we're talking about, because podcasting's a thing that we're great at. Let's get back to that great podcasting thing that we're so dang good at. Enjoy.
I just think, especially knowing now and knowing really after this issue, knowing who the Will and Lion Cat are, it's such a just eye-catching cover in my mind.
Yeah, it is. So this is like a top 3 cover for me. It is stupid gorgeous.
Yeah, I want this as a tattoo on my face, like over my face, my full face.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay. Stick and poke.
Speaking of stick and poke.
All right.
We have this opening splash, which is, of course, it's not quite human. We got 2 ladies here, I'm assuming,
yep.
that are giant heads with legs coming out of them, and they're saying "Welcome to Sextillion," which is, of course, the sex planet. And I am amazed at how they managed to sexualize a being to the point that it's not really sexual anymore.
This is uncanny at its best.
Yes. Yeah. And like you have no breasts, you have no private parts here. It's just head on legs. And I learned something about my sexuality today. First we had spider ladies.
You're about to learn a lot about your sexuality.
Oh boy. So yeah, I love this opening splash is the best. Also, I just want to know what that giant pit is behind them.
Oh yeah, there's a big hole. I don't think I've ever noticed that. Huh.
That's if you want to have sex with the planet. That's how far it goes.
All right.
I love that it's actually like also just I'm assuming that's like an entrance or something to it, because also it's just like this weird sort of metallic glass wasteland.
Yeah, it's this like glimmer void plane.
Mm-hmm. And of course it's the Will and Lion Cat that have arrived on Sextillion to have sex. And they find out that Lion Cat can't go in, which I'm grateful for. Personally.
This is something that I really like about this before Lion Cat goes in, or rather before he finds out he can't. I love just the little detail of the like Lion Cat's my sidekick, and talking about sidekick as like a legal status with freelancers, and we'll learn that a bit more later what sidekicks kind of are. But it's the first kind of glimpse at that the fact that it's like it's sidekick in a very different way than just, oh, he's my buddy I hang with. Like, he is my officially designated sidekick.
Yeah. And also, like, right before that, we get that little bit of world building where he introduces himself as in the Will, and he is then recognized as a freelancer. So if you didn't catch on to that before, the equals freelancer. Which there's a lot of, I'll point out another one later in the issue, but there's a lot of just almost subliminal world building in this, where you're just like, you don't even know you're learning how the world works, but it's doing a great job of it.
Well, and I think that's a theme throughout Saga. I think that's one of the reasons why it's so brilliant, is it's such a weird world that the world building needs to be so subtle in order to kind of get you up to speed without just dumping a bunch of exposition, but it works.
Yes. And so Lion Cat's not allowed in, and also
important question. The talking heads say, I hope you're not going to tie us up and spank us. Where would he spank?
These are the plot holes that I'm starting a petition, redo issue 4 of Saga. The plot holes are too copious. I'm so fucking confused by this whole the existence of all of this. It's great. But yeah, so the Will is left with the choice of either not going in or leaving his weapons and Lion Cat outside. And this is actually this page, I think, or like this scene. Fantastic YouTube channel, one of my favorites of all time, called Strip Panel Naked, and it is by my friend Hassan, who he breaks down different comics and the craft of comics, and he did one that's entirely about lack of dialogue, like the use of dialogue in Saga, and specifically when they choose not to use it. And this was a panel brought up the Will considering what he's going to do with this decision. I'll link that video in the description. It's fantastic.
I also like low-key detail Lion Cat's surprised eyes when the Will starts taking his belt off. Like Lion Cat, it's like comical. Lion Cat is so expressive in all of these panels. It's amazing.
It's almost, I wrote down in my notes, it's almost like an anime shock reaction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just eyes go big and just looks into the distance. Like he's not even looking at like anything.
And then the kind of like slinking away is also very like grumpy anime too. That's a really good comparison.
Yeah, and so the Will's just like, as long as you're headed back to the ship, you mind taking my gear with you, is his response. And then he says that Lion Cat would have had a bad time, and Lion Cat says lying. So someday, Lion Cat. That's the resolution I want to this whole series, is Lion Cat getting to Sextillion and doing God knows what. Boy, I'm very excited for us to get into Sextillion. I'm kind of annoyed that there's another scene before that, but
yeah, that's what I was thinking. I mean, important scene. Marco wakes up and is alive. Learns that his baby has been possessed by a ghost undead babysitter with organs hanging out of her. Deals with it all relatively well, I would say.
Just really quick, I do love, couple things I love here, because that's pretty much what happens is because they were trying to get Marco to the top of the mountain and to use the snow for a spell to heal him, and he finally wakes up after the stock. Geez, that was forever ago, huh? 2 issues ago? 3? I don't remember. I guess 2. That the stock.
Yeah. 1 or 2 weeks ago. That's all.
And the I love, first of all, because we also found out in his like half consciousness, Marco referred to his bride Gwendolyn, who we do not know and is not Alana, and so in reference to him pulling out of this injury.
Yeah.
Alana says, "Not if I cut his heart out first." And I love just the fire, the reflection of the fire in her eyes.
Yeah,
that it's only used for this one shot. And and actually we kind of like ditched the fire after that point. So I think that might just be there so that she could have fire in her eyes when she threatens to cut out her husband's heart, which is very endearing.
I really like that. I feel like out of everybody here, like, she is so just well developed by this point. You 100% know who Alana is, and like like it is a character building moment, but not really. It almost just feels like it just feels so natural coming out of her by this point. You just like, I feel like more than anyone else at this point, you really like know exactly who she is.
Yeah, and I think that's such a big problem with so many just stories in general, where the protagonists are generally like the most boring or the least defined.
Well, they're the blank screen that the reader's supposed to project on, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so the fact that, especially in the couple scenes after this, when we have a conversation between Alana and Marco, just how well defined these characters are is so good. It's so good.
Yeah.
And so Marco wakes up and she gets over wanting to kill him pretty quick once that he's not dead. And she asks about Gwendolyn.
Also, a quick meta moment is Marco sits up and says, "What the hell is that?" You turn the page and you see the upcoming angel orgy and think, "What the hell is that?"
Yep. I want to say that Brian K. Vaughan has acknowledged the fact that, like, because a lot of people think in terms of page turns of like being the next, like the left page, but he's also very good about knowing, like, especially in Saga when they don't have ads in the center of it, so it's never screwed up the page turn. But he's also very good of being like conscious of the fact that the page turn, you can't, like, I think a lot of amateur creators will try to have a page turn on the right page that's supposed to be a surprise from the left page, which makes no sense, and you really have to set it up 2 pages before if it's on the right page.
Yeah, exactly. It's different than movie when you're like, oh, you cut to the next scene.
Yeah,
like, because what you actually see is kind of a scene ahead when you turn the page.
Yeah. And so that's really like that in terms of like cutting, that's really the only control over pacing you have as a writer or an artist, is you can control it 2 pages at a time, and once they turn that page, then you cannot surprise with anything else. For the most part. And so that's a cool little detail. And how great is this transition? Did you notice
the feathers and the snow outside of the gutter? Yeah, just brilliant. This is the kind of stuff, the way, and a couple pages back, Lion Cat stepping out of the frame too. Like, this is the kind of like little meta stuff that just makes it pop so much. Yeah.
Yes. So we have that. We go from snowing mountain, and then towards the end of the page, the snow turns into feathers, and we get that transition to the next page of just a big old, hey, how would you describe this?
An angel orgy, I think is the words that I would use.
That's an angel orgy. Actually, keeping with our describing sex, like having different terms for different types of sex, I'd call this one fuck-ing. Just like fuck period. Period. This is some fucking going on this page. all about it.
If we want to elaborate a little, I could also describe it as a strap-on lesbian angel orgy.
Yeah. Which the will is just waltzing through.
Well, and just everything about him, like, his cape looks so badass, and he's just so, like, centered in the frame. He just feels so stalwart in this weird, sexy, ethereal thing. Like, it's... You get so much Will character moment without his talking, just by how he walks, how he looks, the expression on his face. Like this issue is just such a great character moment for the Will all throughout, because you just like you suddenly really start to understand who this guy is.
Yeah, it's almost like he thinks he wants sex, but he needs something else. Could it be? So yeah, there's and by the way, next page we have, and he lights up a joint.
Yep.
And then next page he's walking through another orgy, and there's just a straight up blowjob on this one. And by the way, a later issue got banned off of like the Comixology or like Apple e-reader, whatever, for showing a blowjob. This issue didn't. This issue
it also didn't get banned for showing someone fingering somebody else's butthole, showing a dominatrix human pyramid.
A worm woman with at least a dozen breasts.
Yeah.
No, it's all wholesome here. I also but without the W, it's wholesome. I don't know.
I also just love the big panel of him kind of walking down the street of Sextillion with all the lights and stuff. It's such a like I feel like the concept of the red light district is something that's been done a lot in media, but it just like captures it in a unique, like kind of rainbowy, like ethereal, queer as fuck way.
And Noah, you're leaving out the most important part of this panel, which is
the furry.
Which is someone in a T-Rex suit. The framing of this could not make me laugh more. It's just someone just in such a gleeful, just like jaunting way, like just walking across the frame, dressed up as, it looks like the Rex from Toy Story, but with just a massive dildo sticking out of it.
It means furries are canon in Saga.
Oh yeah, I mean, I feel like most of Saga is just furry. So
and the other thing that I love about this too is it's like at least like these early scenes don't show the red light district as this like den of sin and debauchery. It just looks like a bunch of people having a real fucking fun time.
It's just fun.
Yeah,
just fun boinking.
Like it's a real celebration of kink.
Again, it's not too late to change the name of the podcast. Celebration of Kink seems very accurate.
That'll be our next podcast.
And it's just this podcast again, but
it's a podcast where we read this issue panel by panel
per episode. I would love that. And we have no dialogue. This is probably like a record for this book so far. We get nearly 3 pages of no dialogue, but I think the pages say plenty. But so he's walking through Sextillion. It's just a fun like buffet of ladies,
a
and
smorgy
men
board,
and everything in between. and then finally at the end of the 3rd page, he hears someone behind him say, "You look disappointed." And it's this asshole.
It's Rectangle Head Fish Dude.
Canonical name. Prove me wrong. Can I just say, this is one of my, I love to death the Fiona Staples characters that are like just straight up animals, like an alligator as a butler.
Yeah.
But I really love when she gets into this weird area that's such a weird combination of attributes, and this guy is fantastic.
Well, and things like this are why I would never want to see Saga adapted to film, because this guy would just look so like weird on film, and
it'd be terrifying.
Yeah, but not in the right way.
Yeah, He's the best. He's the worst. So he's like, hey, you looking for something worse? And also, oh, you clearly had your heart broken. And he says, which, in case you're wondering if you should hate this character, he says, no offense, but I can see what your last bitch did to you. It's all over your face, my brother. Let me guess, was she a strong woman? And then the will just ellipses.
I love this too, though, because like I remember reading this my first time. Like, you don't really like know what Will's direction is here with the Will, the William. You still don't fully like you get. Okay, he's gonna go to Sextillion and stuff, and he seemed to want to go for sex when the ladies were like, "Don't you wanna come?" And but now he's just so kind of placid and walking through this, and then you get this kind of this really huge emotional moment when slimy, creepy fish dude says, what you need is a slave girl, and you get this look on the Will's face that just looks like kind of devastated.
It's I think this is really good sort of subtle, ambiguous acting from Fiona, because like his response to him saying, let me guess, she was a strong woman, it's in ellipses, and you can interpret that as either like, boy, you're an asshole, or like, go on. and like just with that cocked eyebrow in that reaction shot of him saying you need a slave girl, like it seems like equal parts intrigued and like grossed out.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think she's done a perfect job of keeping you sort of on the fence about the Will, which again, we don't know shit about. Except he's a badass. And and also this should be pointed out, this is our second scene with the Will. We finally break that that pattern of one scene with the Will, one scene with Prince Robot, and then the rest with Alana and
that's
Marco.
true. Yeah,
we're getting a Will centric issue here, which I am about.
The William.
And yeah, so he says, come on, let's me and you go a little deeper, which is all kinds of great. And he's literally, we're witnessing I like how he has a literal descent. He's constantly, every scene he's going like further and further into the core of the planet, but it's also his like downward spiral. It's great.
And then we cut, and this is something that I think is really interesting, is the cut to Isabel's face is less jarring than if you just cut to a wide shot of this place, because she's pink. She kind of, it works as almost a transition from this color palette into the darker one. Whereas if you cut without the big panel, if you just cut straight to darkness, or just Alana and Marco talking, it would be it would be a bit more of a jarring cut, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I don't necessarily think it's what you want here too.
No, yeah, the colors, there is such a consciousness of the colors in play here, that especially for transitions, that again, I think it's this book is designed to just make you read this book a bunch and never stop reading this book. Like it is so hard for me to put down Saga anytime I pick it up. That's been one of the hardest parts of recording this, is that I'm reading it an issue at a time, which it is just so hard for me to do.
Yeah. I remember the first time, like, and pretty much every subsequent we reread, I'm like, oh, I'm going to sit down and read a few issues. And then 3 hours later, I'm like, done.
Yeah. So we're back on the mountaintop, and
with boringness, lack of angel orgies, lack of dominatrix pyramids, I guess beautifully written character development.
Yeah, but no dicks though. Not a wiener in sight. First of all, so it's Alana first explaining to Marco, that Isabel disappears when the sun rises, and Marco is confused by that because if you're in space, there's no sunrise and sunset, and how
that's
does
a
any
great
of this
point.
work? And yeah, and then I feel like this is such a good training moment for the audience, where Alana responds, "Honey, I'm as interested in arcane rules of ghosthood as you, but maybe we could stop stalling and start discussing your other wife," which was just like a great, like, yeah, this, first of all, the characters don't even understand it, and also these are the rules, and we're not going to spend that long on them.
Yeah,
It's just
absolutely.
how it works.
Yeah, I love that. Just suspend your disbelief, okay?
Yeah. And so we get a really nice. I love this conversation so much because we've gotten one, like, us as the audience is ready to be angry at Marco, as charming as he is, because we found out that he's married. And it turns out he just has a fiance. Like everything, he has a calm and sensible response to everything. And just says that it was someone that he was engaged to before he went to war, back when he was in quote unquote high school. And like they had, like, he wrote to her saying he had second thoughts after his first big battle. And she just said, keep fighting the good fight, and didn't really sympathize with what he was going through. And they just sort of grew apart. And so he was over her before him and Alana met. And it is just, I love how it again is so reflective of Marco's character here, and just how calm and cool and sincere. I think that's the big thing, is he's just so sincere and also still really oblivious, which makes you trust him more.
He's
because
so
he doesn't know the right
endearing.
thing to say. Yeah, because he literally says, he just like casually mentions things like, "Oh, by the way, the rings, our wedding rings, are the engagement rings that we had, and also you're much hotter because." He says, Gwendolyn may have been tall, but her hips were boyish, not womanly like yours.
I also think the delight on his face as he says that. He's like, all right, this is the point that's gonna land. This is I'm getting out of the sin bin with this one.
I think that is such a, I don't know how intentional it is, but I think that is such an effective way to make you trust a character, to where they're clearly, like, they don't say everything perfectly. Like, all the things that matter he's saying correctly, but then, like, all the, like, just oblivious, like, just dumb things to say, he still says.
And I just love the way that Alana and Marco fight, because they fight all the time, but it doesn't feel like toxic fighting. Like, they have reasons to fight. They're in a very stressful situation, and information comes up. Like if my fiance said another fiance's dying like on their dying breath said their name, I'd be like, okay, well that's a little fucked. But then their fights are just so like reasonable and realistic, and it just feels like tension in a real relationship.
Yeah, and I think that's a thing that makes me believe that, like, you know, that they work together, is because that's something that I've run into with my marriage, is like, it's not about not fighting. Like, if you fight, that's inevitable and it's healthy. It's a matter of like not making it personal and actually being productive. But I love that there's just this, I feel like in so many things where it's like the dream couple where they'll do anything to make it work and stuff, and there's like no issues between them, is so much less interesting. And I love that this is, again, just such a realistic portrayal. And also when I was talking about the subtle world building, one thing I noticed this read through is Marco says, "Look, when I left Wreath, I was still a gung-ho kid who just wanted to do my mom proud and kick some ass." And the fact that he says his mom is some very good foreshadowing about the roles of his parents.
Yeah, that's very true. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, but I love that just subtle, very subtle setup of his parents, who we may or may not meet in the future. Who knows? but it sounds like he's trying to impress his mom with that, and I love that. And and one more thing about this one is that this is just something like we're obviously not hypercritical on this podcast. And this is something that I bring up more because I think it's interesting than just a straight up criticism, because I think it's usually sort of a bullshit criticism. But in the last page of the scene, when Marco and Alana are talking and it cuts to him saying, "I swear Gwendolyn may have been tall, but her hips are boyish," we break the 180 line. So
that's true.
We switch who's on the left and the right. But the thing is, like, it totally works for this because your eye line still goes straight down. And I don't know if that's a matter of Fiona not consciously thinking of the 180 roll, or like consciously breaking it, or just not giving a shit about it. But I think that this is a good example of not needing to adhere to that, because this book breaks every rule of storytelling. But also I'm interested to see if we see much of that in the future.
Yeah, that's a good thing to keep an eye out for.
Yeah, because also, like, this is one of her first comics. Like, she hasn't made a ton of comics at this point. So I'm interested to see what other sort of cinematography things she adapts along the way.
How the fuck can this be one of your first comics? Also, can we talk about that?
Screw that. How dare you? And then the great closing line of, for a pacifist, you sure beg to get stabbed a lot.
And I like that too, because that kind of implies like that's like the end of the discussion, but it's not like they're like kissing and making up. Like they'll probably awkwardly sit around and do their own thing for the rest of the night and then wake up tomorrow like nothing happened.
Yes. There's it's so real and great. Oh boy. And then we get to a scene.
Yeah, we do get to a scene.
We arrive at a scene.
We get a nice close up of the Will's handsome little face.
Handsome little face. Elevator opening and the ding, which isn't even like, it's just a good way to start a scene. Like, that's not even like a transition from the last one as far as I can tell. It's just a great ding. Way to, it's just like we've arrived at this scene. And so the fish face shows him into this. He says it's the inner core. So we are at the depths of Sextillion, and judging by how fucking crazy the top of Sextillion was, this is either great or the worst.
Well, and we start to get a sense that it's the worst when we're talking about handpicked from camps across the galaxy.
Yeah, refugee camps.
I really like this because you start to see, like, already, I mean, you've been seeing it already, but the price of the war on the galaxy as a whole. I'm sorry, there's vacuuming outside my door. I'm sure my mic is picking it up. I apologize to you listeners, and I apologize to John, who needs to try and edit around that.
You know, it's just the vacuum of space. It's perfect.
But the idea that this war has just ravaged the entire fucking galaxy. Like, everything is touched by it. Refugees everywhere. It's a shitty situation.
Yeah, and it is portrayed in a very effective way with my one of the most upsetting splash pages in this series.
Well, also before we get to that splash page, can we talk how fucking slimy this guy's grin is?
Oh, God.
When he's like, I taught her to say that.
Yeah, and also, that's a thing where it's like, as great as his character design is, it works so well for him because his smile just takes up so much of his head.
It's just so fucking
makes
creepy.
It so unsettling. But yeah, he says, "You decent in there, slave girl," and he gets a response, "Anything but, master." And he says, "I taught her to say that." And then we get that page turn. And it is a 6-year-old girl that is behind that door, and the Will just looks at her and asks how old she is.
And again, like, you can't friggin' tell what the Will is gonna do. Like, he's got this sadness when he looks down, but then when it shows from her perspective looking up at him, he looks so, like, sinister.
Yeah, and this is so I love that there's been that that's been a very good momentum through his scenes, is just not especially knowing. Like, we are told, oh, he just wants to have sex at the beginning, and that's all we know going into this, so we don't know how he's going to react to anything. And especially after, he's been nothing but like he showed some sympathy towards that giant monster in the first issue. But other than that, he's like a piece of shit. and he's like very petty and immature and all these. So it's interesting to see him with an actual ethical choice here. And so she says she's 6, and she says, I'll do anything you want. And he says, so then close your eyes. And you know what? I think we get the two extremes. Like you said, this is a hard in or a hard out. We get the two extremes of Saga in terms of sex and violence here.
Saga makes the most of its hard R rating. I'll say that.
Oh yeah. Which again, I cannot imagine it being adapted for anything really, unless it is like NC-17. Is there a Canadian equivalent of NC-17?
I don't know. I don't really know. Much about Canada's rating system.
Well,
but a quick Wikipedia will tell you A is adult,
okay,
which is more than R. Apparently, there's G, PG, 14A. I remember 14A.
14A.
14A is basically PG-13.
So 14-year-old adults.
14 years of old, 14 or less must be accompanied by an adult.
Okay.
This is a very irrelevant conversation. We can cut this in post.
No. This is honestly the most informational thing we've said. We're getting that culture. Okay, so the Will, I love this too, because the Will almost lovingly sets his hand on the side of Fish Guy's face. And the Fish Guy says that he doesn't normally join in. And then he places his other hand on the other side of Fish Guy's face and says, she's a goddamn child. And Fish Guy brings up a very good point. He says, so what? You're a freelancer. You murder children. And then Pop.
Yeah, Pop. The guts, teeth, everything everywhere. In case you're listening and you haven't read... he claps this guy's head and explodes it.
Yeah. It is fucking graphic.
There's teeth flying. You can see in like the bottom left, like a gum with teeth on it flying out. There's individual bits, mostly teeth, which is really creepy. There's a lot of teeth flying around.
That's why, like, as satisfying as this guy's death is, that's why I usually have a lot of trouble with violence in things, not just because I'm like woozy or anything, but because when it's shown strictly as entertainment, I have a lot of issues with that. And like I said before, Saga is so good about making the violence properly upsetting. It does not sort of disguise it as just pure entertainment at any point. It's just like legit traumatizing. This is up there in terms of that shit.
And then you start to get Hazel's narration explaining that the Will is a monster, which is so interesting because, like, I know whenever I read this, at first you're like, oh, he's not a monster, he just killed this slimy dude, but then it makes you think, oh no, he just like fucking popped this dude's head, and this dude said he murdered children and stuff like that. It's just like, you really start to get a sense of the Will's very weird, complex moral compass.
Yeah, it is. He's such a, I don't even, anti-villain?
Yeah.
Is that a term? But yeah, I love that. Just a reminder that sort of, like, in case you were at all satisfied with what just happened, literally the voiceover says, this guy is fucking terrible.
Yeah.
He's a fucking monster, is in all caps. And I'd say they justify that claim.
And you just get that with the look on his face too. Like he just like doesn't even really look like he's considering what he just did or anything. He's just kind of staring like it's just like a fact that he just popped this guy's fucking head like a pimple.
He just goes back to the same expression he's had most of his scenes.
Yeah.
Like nothing happened. And he just like that bit of a grimace he has when he's exploding a man's head with his bare hands is the most emotion we get out of him. And I think that yeah, I like that this also ended up being what he needed instead of sex, which again sort of makes him as much of a monster, but for a good cause of freeing this child. But also it's like, clearly this is probably what he subconsciously came here to do.
Yeah. You just want to take a stroll around in the Will's head because it's got to be a weird place.
So that scene, and now the Will has a young girl with him.
I hope it doesn't make Lion Cat jealous.
What do we got? We got one more scene. Oh God, we have only one more scene.
We do, just like that. 42 minutes later.
Oh my gosh. So we get to Alana, and she just says shit. And this is, I think, I love how competent Alana is here. And just reminding you that she's ex-military. Like, she knows what the fuck she's doing. But Marco's changing the diaper. And
having trouble with it.
And saying it's grosser than gangrenous wounds. Alana says we got to get the hell out of here because there is a noise canceling field. I love that she notices a noise canceling field, which is also just a dope concept, a dope sci-fi concept of these ships as their cloaking device. They just emit noise canceling fields. Yeah, that's so cool, and just like so cool that she's able to pick it up and notice it too, because you can. It's almost the kind of thing again where you could like imagine it in a film. Like you could imagine kind of a silence falling, and the way that it's used. Yeah, which again, like it's one of those things where it's like times like that for a second I'm like, man, that'd be cool, like as a sequence, as a live action sequence, but also like that plays out in my head exactly. Like I hear what's happening in this, like that eerie silence. But yeah, so it's still the fucking best as a comic. And then we get one of these massive Kabuto looking ships that I think we got from that first double splash. I think we saw Royal Vonder tanks, which is again great name. Yep. And so clearly they've been tracked down, they've been found, and what are they gonna do? We can't use violence, right? Because Marco took an oath. What? So what are we gonna do? I guess Marco's gonna break his oath. Rips his sword out. We fight. That is, oh my God. By the way, fucking great. What an iconic moment where Alana says, Marco will never make it back to the tunnels in time. What other choice do we have? And he says, the last one. And then breaks the chain from like that's connecting his sword in his sheath. And then just badass magic sword splash here. There's also something very like Captain America about Marco taking out a sword when facing this giant fucking air tank with turrets and stuff. Yes, it is. And it's one thing I think it's interesting to me. This is one of those times where I'm not entirely sure what's going through his head, because he has been so well. I mean, it makes sense because he literally says it's the last choice, so he has to break this oath. And yeah, I think that I just accidentally saw the splash from the next issue, which God, I'm so excited. I know. Yeah. But yeah, so this is a big moment. What's he gonna do? And that's how you do a fucking cliffhanger. That is. They're literally on a cliff. Yeah. It's the best. And that's the end of that issue. What are your thoughts on the issue, John? Oh my God, I love it. I think this is one of those where it was just like I really feel like the fact that we're 4 issues in and we're getting this, like this is usually when an arc starts to slow down because it's that like lead up to the climax. Yeah. But I think this is probably the most iconic one we've hit yet. Like this is everyone remembers Sextillion, and that everyone remembers the clapping the head till it explodes, and
it's that clap raises the stakes.
Yeah. Yes. Especially since like this whole issue is reminding you of the lengths that this comic will go, and how it will not hold back at any point, and then to end it on that sort of promise of violence is just really effective, way more effective than usual. Like, again, if end any superhero comic with like a superhero about to aiming like his web shooters at someone, it's just like, yeah, whatever. That's all you do. But yeah, to bookend all of that violence with the most peaceful character about to pop off is really exciting and really scary, because also we've seen how much of a monster the Will is, and so now it's like, oh, this is the one character that isn't that monster.
It's so interesting too, just because like reading this, knowing everything that's coming, like 4 issues in is like getting towards the end of an arc typically, but I just feel like I've read comics where like 4 issues in, I'm like, okay, I see, and most of them are like limited runs or whatever, where I'm like, okay, I see where this is going, I see where this is gonna end, and this is just like, I feel like we're just ramping up. Like I'm like at this point, I'm like when is this character gonna get here? Who's Prince Robot? Are they gonna survive? This and that and that. Like, there's just so many things amping up, and I think it's really gutty as a writer to do that in a comic when usually you're used to like 6 issue arcs that are pretty satisfying at the end of them, right?
Yeah. What's really amazing to me, and what has like honestly just made me more and more obsessed with Saga, is that it just maintains that. I don't emotionally, for me, it doesn't really let up on that. Like, I've never not been just dying to see what the next issue is.
Yeah.
And even if it's like, and there are plenty of times where it has like satisfying emotional wrap-ups on different arcs and stuff, but they always end it with that, like, here's the next thing we're diving into, shit moment.
You want to keep going.
Yeah. Hey, I like reading this book.
I like reading this book too.
It's a joy to read this book. What was your favorite moment from this issue?
I think my favorite moment, I mean, my gut goes to the pop, but I think my favorite moment is actually like the silent stretch of the Will walking through Sextillion, where you just like you start to understand how fucking crazy this world is with all this shit going around. I mean, I feel like every issue I say, you're starting to understand how crazy this world is. Maybe we never really understand, but there's all this debaucherous stuff, and it's just such a giant character moment for him to just be walking stoic through all of this.
Yeah, which, you know what, I just realized that's this comic's cantina scene.
Oh yeah,
is Sextillion, and that's we're seeing all the weird, crazy shit that this universe is capable of. That's
an apt comparison. But also, I feel like every scene is this thing's cantina scene.
This is true. Yeah, you know what? Well, for me, I think that I'm always such a sucker for the just quiet, subtle character building moments and like world building and stuff like that. So I think my favorite moment is probably the T-Rex stick.
Yeah. I saw you telegraphed that a mile away.
Which is exactly how far I'd want to stay away from that T-Rex stick. But I fucking love it. That is some of the most. I would love to see the script for this issue to see.
Oh my god, I know.
Because either scenario where it's just like Brian K. Vaughan is just like, oh, there's a guy in a T-Rex suit that's just joyously walking across the panel like he's marching. It's so good. Either that or Fiona Sable's just like, hey, I'm gonna put a guy in a fucking T-Rex suit with a big old dick,
big old purple penis.
Yeah, that's a good one. Hey, you know what I think we need?
A question?
Just real quick. Before a question, there's something even more important. And that's the theme music to the question.
Oh.
Let's listen to that. Hey, that was great.
Wow,
music.
what a great song. What a great song.
You know what? Actually, I secretly wanted everyone to hear how weird that transition is for us to act like we just listened to something and we didn't. So I'm actually putting the music in right here. Okay, there we go. Do you have a question? Did you come up with a question?
I think my question coming out of this that I would be interested to hear from people is just like, especially from first time readers, what's your take on the will? Like, this far in, who is the will? I think that's the big thing that I remember when I first read this issue. It's just like, I need to know more about this guy, right?
Yeah, I like that. I think we should. I was just gonna ask how horny this one made him. So I like your. That's the secondary optional answer is just, hey, how horny this one make you?
Also, which sextillion room appealed most to you?
Ooh, that's a better version of that. All right, so those are our 2 questions for the week. Oh, I figured out this is how we're gonna do.
Mine, by the way, is the dominatrix human pyramid. I'm about that.
Okay, hold on. I gotta go. I gotta study this. But I finally figured out how we're going to answer questions. So where you can answer questions consistently, there will be 2 places for you to answer questions. That will make it infinitely easier for us. And that will be either on the YouTube video, we will have the pinned comment of every video. That will be the question or questions of the week, and just reply to that pinned comment. So we will be reading some from there. Alternatively, we now have the Twitter account for Horns and Wings, which is at Horns and Wings, no ampersand. And every week I will pin to the top of the account the question or questions of the week, and just respond to that tweet. And those are the 2 ways you can reach out to us.
You could also write us by mail if you can figure out either of our addresses.
Yeah. Again, just I'm gonna give one hint every week. Brick.
I'm gonna give my hint. My hint will be 9.
Ooh. And really quick, where I want to be in Sextillion, I think I'm gonna go with the guy that just gets to walk through the angel orgy. That's too much pressure to partake. But if I can just passively
enjoy the view,
then I'm all about that. Okay, so I made a list. I made an actual list of the whole wrap up of the episode. So this is gonna fly by, and it's gonna be great.
I didn't.
So next issue. Great, the little teaser. We're gonna find out what Prince Robot's been up to, and so come back next week for that issue.
He's been pooping.
He has been pooping. Robots poop. Heard it here first, folks. So come back next week, or if you're listening to this on the public feed, you can go listen to that episode right this second on the Make Stuff Patreon at patreon.com/MakeStuffStudios. That link in the description. For $1 a month, you get to listen to those early. And what else we got? Oh, where can they find you on the internets? We already got 9. Don't give me any more than 9. It's a great hint. I think I know. I think I already know.
You can find me. You can find me at Watch Polyphonic on Twitter. I guess Instagram. I don't really use Instagram, but if you follow me, it'll make me feel good. And of course at youtube.com/sleep.
Good luck spelling that.
And of course at youtube.com/c/polyphonic, where I release videos about music that are nothing really at all like this podcast. But they're fun, so check them out.
Yes, they are. I'm trying something really quick because I have a hold on, make stuff. I spelled make stuff wrong. That's fun. Okay, yeah. Look at this. I don't have to type that C to get my channel. Look at that. I just made plugging so much easier.
Let me see though. Oh no. Yeah, youtube.com/polyphonic.
Look at that.
There we go.
Ha ha ha, we broke the system. So yeah, find me at youtube.com/MakeStuffStudios. No C. Not a single C in that thing. And at Jonathan Oscar on Twitter. I don't even want to spell it. It's too long. And Horns and Wings is all over the place now. We're on Twitter at Horns and Wings. We're on Instagram at Horns and Wings Pod. Whoever stole Horns and Wings on Instagram,
give it to us, please.
Fuck off. Fuck off. I hate you. Also, please give it to us. I'd appreciate it. And we are officially on everything.
Are we on Grindr?
Everywhere. We're on Grindr. We're on. Those are and by everything I mean Apple Podcasts and Grindr.
What does a dating app look like in the Saga world?
Ooh, that's a good question. Question that we'll get into next episode. Look at that. I'm sure we'll remember. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcast. You know what? Hey, I'm gonna do a quick little game. I'm gonna name some podcast things, and you tell me if they're real. Podcast things we're on. Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Fake. It's real. Overcast. Right. We are on. Pocket Casts.
I'm gonna go ahead and guess all of these are real because it sounds like you're reading from a list.
Well, that's how I'm selling it, though. Think I'm not gonna act like I'm reading from a list? So you're saying Pocket Cast is real? That's what you think?
That's my guess.
Yeah, it's real. Okay, one more really quick. Breaker.
I've heard of Breaker, but I don't actually think that it's an app or a podcast thing. I'm gonna go fake.
It's real.
God damn it.
Listen to us. Our biggest dude. All the people listening on Breaker right now are so offended. Unsubscribed.
All two of you.
Oh boy, you're really coming at Breaker this episode. My apologies to the Breaker family over at Breaker.
To the Breaker estate.
The fine person over at Breaker. So go check us out there. The YouTube channel. I think you just have to look up Horns and Wings because you can only give yourself a cool address once you have 1 million subscribers. So yeah, go look us up on YouTube.
No, you can give yourself a custom address.
Can you do that early?
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I'm just gonna say now it's Horns and Wings Pod. I'm gonna assume.
Yeah, we'll see. But I'm pretty sure I did. I'm pretty sure I did mine when I had like 4 subscribers.
Okay, well, we'll check that out. And yeah, leave a review. That's a thing people say. I don't know. And yeah, go answer those questions of the week on the Twitter or YouTube page if you can find either of those. A big old thank you to Fiona Staples, Brian K. Vaughan, Phonographics, and Image Comics, the fine people over there, for making the best comic in the history of the world. And you want to, you know, do you have a question for me to wrap this up?
I think I'm gonna throw to you this time. Gonna spice it up.
Okay. Well, I have a question for you then.
Oh yeah?
Hey, Noah. Am I shitting?
Hey,
I'm shitting. Bye.